My name is Emily, and until that afternoon, I thought I knew everything about my family. I thought I understood my grandfather, his routines, his stories, the way his eyes lit up when he spoke about the past. He was the steady anchor in a world that often felt chaotic. But all of that changed the day he leaned across the table, smiled at me in that knowing way of his, and asked, "So, how's the apartment treating you?" The words hit me like a thunderclap. Apartment? What apartment? At first I thought I had misheard him. We were sitting in his warm, cluttered living room, the smell of fresh-baked bread in the air, and I laughed nervously. "Grandpa, what do you mean? I don't have an apartment." But the way he smiled back at me, soft, deliberate, like he was keeping a secret I should already know, made my stomach twist. His eyes, still sharp even in old age, twinkled with something I couldn't quite name. Pride? Amusement? Or was it a test? Before I could ask again, my mother cleared her throat sharply from across the room. She shot him a look, a warning, quick but unmistakable. "Dad, Emily doesn't need to worry about that right now." The silence that followed was heavier than stone. Grandpa's smile faded, but only slightly. He patted my hand with a wink and changed the subject as though nothing had happened. But my world tilted in that instant. Because I wasn't imagining things. He had meant what he said. And my mother's reaction told me everything. There was something I wasn't supposed to know. That night, lying in bed, I replayed the moment over and over. Grandpa's smile, Mom's sharp tone, the way my uncle shifted uncomfortably in his chair, staring at his hands. They all knew something. Something about me. Something about an apartment I had never seen, never signed for, never even heard mentioned until that day. And that was the beginning. The beginning of a mystery that would tear open the seams of my family, a secret my grandfather had kept hidden for years, and a truth that once revealed would change everything I thought I knew about my life, and about him. When my grandfather asked me about my apartment, it didn't feel like just a slip of the tongue. It felt like a puzzle piece sliding onto the table, one that didn't belong to the picture I thought I was building of my life. And yet, once it appeared, I couldn't ignore it. The rest of that day at his house passed in a blur. My family filled the room with chatter, my mom busying herself in the kitchen, my uncle ranting about the rising cost of gas, my aunt fussing with the television remote. But I couldn't stop thinking about Grandpa's words. Every time I caught his eye, he just smiled faintly, as if waiting for me to ask again. But I didn't. Not then. Because I had noticed the warning look from my mother, and I knew better than to challenge her in front of everyone. I'd learned long ago that Mom hated surprises. She was the type to carefully control conversations, to steer them away from topics she didn't approve of. And Grandpa's question, whatever it really meant, had unsettled her. Still, when I hugged him goodbye later, he held on to me a moment longer than usual. He leaned in close and whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, "Some doors open when you're ready to walk through them, Emily. Don't be afraid when you find the key." The words sent chills through me. I wanted to ask him what he meant, but Mom called from the car and broke the moment. Grandpa just winked and gave my hand a squeeze before letting me go. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was a storm of questions. What apartment? Why would Grandpa say that? Was he confusing me with someone else? But no, he had looked directly at me, his eyes clear and steady. He had meant it. The next day at work, I found myself distracted, typing the same sentence into emails over and over until my boss tapped me on the shoulder and asked if I was all right. I lied and said I hadn't slept well. The truth was, I felt like my life had cracked open, and I couldn't see what was on the other side of the fracture. When I got home that evening, I called my mom. I tried to sound casual as I asked, "So, what was Grandpa talking about yesterday? When he mentioned an apartment?" There was a pause. Too long of a pause. Then she laughed, a little too brightly. "Oh, honey, you know how he gets sometimes. He probably got confused. Don't take it seriously." "But Mom," I pressed, "he seemed so sure. And then you stopped him. Why?" Her voice hardened instantly. "Emily, drop it. Your grandfather's memory isn't what it used to be. Don't start digging into things that aren't there." But her sharp tone told me everything I needed to know. There was something there. She just didn't want me to find it. Over the next week, I visited Grandpa again, this time without telling anyone. When I arrived, he was sitting on the porch with his cane resting against the chair, a blanket over his knees. His face lit up when he saw me. "Emily," he said warmly, "I was wondering when you'd come back." I sat beside him, nervous but determined. "Grandpa," I said quietly, "I need to know. What apartment were you talking about?" For a moment, he studied me with those sharp eyes of his, as if weighing whether I was ready. Then he chuckled softly. "You always were curious, just like your father." The mention of my dad, who had passed away years ago, made my throat tighten. "So, it's real? There's actually something?" He nodded slowly. "There's a lot you don't know, Emily. Things your mother and uncle decided weren't for you to know. But I wanted to give you something, a place, a start. You'll understand in time." My heart raced. "Where is it? Why hasn't anyone told me?" Grandpa leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Because they don't want you to have it. But it's yours, Emily. It's always been yours. The papers are locked away, and when the moment comes, you'll see for yourself." I wanted to shake him, to demand answers right then, but I knew pushing too hard might make him retreat. Instead, I asked gently, "Why would they hide it from me?" He sighed, looking out across the yard. "People get greedy. Families can be complicated. But remember, what's meant for you will always find its way to you." His words both comforted and terrified me. If my family was hiding something as big as an apartment, what else were they keeping from me? I started noticing strange things when I'd brought it up again around my relatives. My uncle would quickly change the subject. My aunt would suddenly get busy in the kitchen. My mother's eyes would narrow, her lips pressed into a thin line. The more they avoided the topic, the more certain I became that Grandpa wasn't confused at all. He had been trying to tell me something important. And if the rest of my family wanted it buried, then it must be something worth fighting to uncover. But I had no idea just how far they were willing to go to keep the truth from me. That was the beginning of everything unraveling. A single question from my grandfather had opened a door I couldn't close again. And with every step forward, I would discover that my family's secrets ran deeper than I had ever imagined. I couldn't shake Grandpa's words. Some doors open when you're ready to walk through them. For nights afterward, I lay awake replaying that moment on the porch, trying to unravel what he meant. He wasn't confused. He wasn't rambling. His voice had been clear, deliberate. He had meant it. But if he had given me something, if there really was an apartment tied to my name, then why was my family so desperate to hide it? The question gnawed at me, and the more I thought about it, the more determined I became. If my family wouldn't tell me the truth, I would find it myself. The following weekend, I returned to Grandpa's house. This time, I came alone again, timing my visit for the late afternoon when I knew Mom usually went shopping. Grandpa greeted me at the door with that same twinkle in his eye. "You're back," he said with a knowing smile, as though he had been expecting me. "Grandpa," I said softly, "I need to know, please. I can't stop thinking about what you said." For a long moment, he just looked at me. Finally, he nodded and motioned for me to follow him inside. He led me into his study, a room I hadn't spent much time in since I was a child. It smelled faintly of cedar and old paper. The walls were lined with shelves crammed full of books, binders, and boxes. He went to the desk and pulled open the bottom drawer. From inside, he retrieved a worn leather notebook. He pressed it into my hands. "This," he said quietly, "will help you understand." My fingers trembled as I opened it. The first few pages were filled with Grandpa's neat handwriting, lists, addresses, notes scribbled in the margins. One entry stood out. Unit 3B, Greenfield Apartments, Emily. My heart skipped a beat. It was real. The apartment existed. I looked up at him, wide-eyed. "Grandpa, what is this? Why didn't anyone tell me?" He sighed and settled into the chair across from me. "Because they didn't want you to have it. After your father passed, I wanted to make sure you had something of your own, a place to start your life when you were ready. But your mother, she had other ideas." My throat tightened. She hid it from me? His gaze softened. "She thought she was protecting you, or maybe protecting herself. You'll see soon enough." Before I could ask more, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway made him stiffen. His eyes flicked to the window. "Quick, put it away," he whispered. I shoved the notebook into my bag just as the front door opened and my mom's voice rang out. "Dad! Emily, are you here?" My pulse raced as Grandpa gave me a reassuring nod. I forced a smile as Mom entered the study. "There you are," she said, her eyes narrowing slightly when she saw me. "I didn't know you were visiting again." "I just wanted to spend some time with Grandpa," I said lightly, praying she couldn't hear the hammering of my heart. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Digging deeper. That night, in the privacy of my room, I pored over the notebook. Between Grandpa's notes about gardening and grocery lists, there were more references to the Greenfield Apartments, payment dates, receipts, even a spare key taped to one of the pages. The reality sank in. He hadn't just imagined this, he had been actively maintaining the place, and it was tied to me. I wanted to rush out right then and find it, but something told me to move carefully. If my mother had gone this far to keep it from me, I couldn't risk her finding out too soon. Over the next week, I pretended everything was normal, while secretly planning my visit to Greenfield. I even asked my coworker Jess to cover for me one afternoon so I could leave work early. When Friday finally came, I drove across town to the address scribbled in the notebook. My stomach flipped as I pulled up to a modest brick building with faded green shutters. It wasn't glamorous, but it was solid, real. My hand shook as I climbed the steps and found Unit 3B. I slid the spare key into the lock, my pulse pounding. The door creaked open. Inside, the apartment was clean, but bare, like it had been waiting for someone. Sunlight streamed through sheer curtains. A small table sat in the corner with a vase of fake flowers. And on the counter, to my shock, was an envelope with my name on it. I tore it open breathless. Inside was a letter in Grandpa's handwriting. "Emily, if you're reading this, then you've found what was always meant to be yours. This apartment is in your name, though your mother and uncle may try to tell you otherwise. Keep this place safe. One day, you'll understand why I did this. Love, Grandpa." Tears blurred my vision as I sank onto the couch. It was true, all of it. He had given me this, my own space, my own beginning. But if it was really mine, why had my family hidden it? Shadows of Secret. That question burned brighter than ever, and it wasn't long before I got my first clue. The next Sunday, during a family dinner, I overheard my mother and uncle whispering in the kitchen while they thought no one was listening. I lingered just out of sight. "She's been asking questions again," my uncle muttered. "I know," she hissed back. "I told you Dad was slipping. But if Emily ever finds out..."
Then we lose everything, he snapped. Do you want that? He promised it would be ours. My stomach dropped. They weren't just hiding the apartment from me, they were planning to take it for themselves. In that moment, everything changed. This wasn't just about curiosity anymore. It was about betrayal. My own family had tried to erase me from something my grandfather had chosen to give me, and I wasn't about to let them. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the pieces clicking into my mind. Grandpa's secret wasn't just about a place to live. It was about trust, loyalty, and legacy. He had left me something of my own, and my family had tried to bury it. But why? Was it money? Greed? Or was there something even deeper hidden in that apartment that they didn't want me to discover? I didn't know yet, but I was determined to find out. And little did I realize, the deeper I dug, the more dangerous the truth would become.
The night I overheard my mother and uncle whispering in the kitchen, something inside me broke. I had always known my family wasn't perfect. We had our share of arguments, cold shoulders, and unspoken resentments. But I had never believed they would deliberately try to rob me of something my grandfather had meant for me. Now I couldn't unhear their words. If Emily ever finds out, we lose everything. They weren't protecting me. They were protecting themselves. And suddenly, every strained smile, every evasive answer, every deflection made perfect sense. They had been lying to me all along. The confrontation. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, my anger had hardened into something sharp and unshakable. I wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. That Sunday dinner, I waited until everyone was seated. My uncle was on his second helping of roast chicken, my aunt fussed over the salad, and my mother sat stiffly across from me, her eyes cool and watchful. Grandpa, as always, sat at the head of the table, quiet but alert. I cleared my throat, my fork clinking against the plate. "So," I began, my voice steady despite the storm inside me, "I visited the Greenfield apartments last week." The room froze. Fork stopped midair. My mother's face went pale. My uncle's jaw clenched. "What?" my mother whispered. "I found Unit 3B, with my name on it. Grandpa left me a letter there. He wanted me to have it, and I know you've been hiding it from me." My uncle slammed his fist against the table, rattling the dishes. "You had no right!" he barked. "No right!" I shot back, my voice rising. "It's in my name. Grandpa gave it to me. You were the ones trying to take it." "Emily," my mother began, but I cut her off. "No, enough lies. I overheard you. Both of you. You said if I ever found out, you'd lose everything. So tell me the truth. What were you planning?" The silence was suffocating. Finally, my uncle sneered. "You think you know everything, don't you? That apartment was supposed to be ours. We were the ones keeping it running, paying the bills when your grandfather couldn't." "That's not true," Grandpa's voice rang out suddenly, strong and clear. All eyes turned to him. "I paid those bills. I kept that place in Emily's name for a reason." My heart swelled, but Mom's eyes flashed with fury. "Dad, why would you give her that apartment? She's too young, too naive. She doesn't understand what it takes to handle something like that." "She understands more than you give her credit for," Grandpa said firmly. "And I trusted her. That's why I didn't trust you." The room erupted into chaos. My uncle shouting, my mother pleading, my aunt wringing her hands. But through it all, Grandpa kept his gaze fixed on me, his eyes filled with quiet strength. "This is yours, Emily. Don't let them take it." Cracks in the family. In the days that followed, the family divided into camps. My mother and uncle grew colder toward me, their calls curt, their visits laced with tension. My aunt, though less hostile, urged me to let it go for the sake of peace. But I couldn't. Every time I stepped into that apartment, I felt my grandfather's presence, his faith in me woven into every detail. It wasn't just a property, it was a symbol, a promise. And yet fear lingered. If they had lied about this, what else were they hiding? One evening, I returned to the apartment to find the lock scratched, as if someone had tried to force it open. My stomach knotted. I called Grandpa immediately. "They know you've claimed it," he said grimly. "Be careful, Emily. They won't stop easily." His words haunted me. Secrets surface. Driven by equal parts anger and determination, I dug deeper into the notebook Grandpa had given me. Between the receipts and notes, I found another clue, a folder tucked in the back pocket. Inside were photocopies of legal documents, property deeds, bank transfers, even a clause in Grandpa's will naming me as the sole heir to Unit 3B. My hands shook as I read the papers. This wasn't just about an apartment. It was about inheritance, security, independence. And my family had tried to erase it all. The next time I saw Mom, I confronted her again. "I know about the will," I said. "I know Grandpa named me. Why would you hide that from me?" Her face hardened. "Because you're not ready, Emily. That place should have been sold years ago. You don't understand how complicated this is." "Then explain it," I demanded. But she didn't. She just turned away, her silence louder than any confession. A dangerous divide. The more I pressed, the uglier things became. My uncle left me a voicemail dripping with venom. "Walk away, Emily, or you'll regret it." My aunt stopped answering my calls. Even Mom stopped coming around as often, her visits reduced to clipped conversations and judgmental stares. It was Grandpa and me against the rest of them. One night, sitting in the dim light of his study, I asked him, "Why me? Why give it to me and not them?" He smiled sadly. "Because I see myself in you. You don't settle. You ask questions. You want more than what's handed to you. And that scares them, but it makes me proud." His words filled me with both pride and sorrow. Because I realized then that the fight wasn't just about property. It was about legacy, about who Grandpa believed deserved to carry his trust forward. The breaking point. The final straw came 2 weeks later. I walked into the apartment and found the envelope with Grandpa's letter missing. Drawers were left open, papers scattered across the floor. Someone had broken in. My chest tightened as I sank to the floor. I called Grandpa, my voice trembling. "It's gone. The letter. They took it." There was a long pause. Then he said quietly, "Emily, it's time you knew everything. Come tomorrow, alone." That night, I barely slept. My mind raced with fear and anticipation. Tomorrow, I would learn the full truth. Tomorrow, the battle lines in my family would be drawn once and for all. And I couldn't help but wonder, when the truth came out, would I still have a family left?
When Grandpa told me to come to his house the next day, alone, I knew something was about to change forever. His voice over the phone had been steady, but there was a heaviness to it, a sense of finality that made my chest ache. I drove there early, the sun barely over the horizon. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly they ached. The night before, I had dreamed of keys rattling in locks, of doors opening to empty rooms, of shadows whispering my name. When I arrived, Grandpa was waiting for me in the study. He looked tired, older than I'd ever seen him, but his eyes were still sharp. On the desk in front of him was a worn briefcase. "Sit down, Emily," he said softly. I obeyed, my heart pounding. He rested his hands on the briefcase for a long moment before sliding it toward me. "Everything you need to know is in here. The truth, the proof, and the choice I always meant for you to make." The truth. With trembling fingers, I opened the briefcase. Inside were stacks of papers, legal documents, property deeds, bank statements, even letters written in Grandpa's hand. The first page I picked up was a notarized deed. My name was right there, typed clearly. Emily Carter, sole owner, Unit 3B, Greenfield Apartments. Tears welled in my eyes. It was official. It had always been mine. But as I dug deeper, I found more than just proof of ownership. There were records of money transfers Grandpa had made over the years, quietly funneling funds into an account under my name. Letters explaining how he had set aside not just the apartment, but a safety net for my future. And then a letter addressed directly to me. "Emily, by now you know the truth. I gave you the apartment not as a burden, but as a gift. Your father would have wanted you to have security, independence, and a place that was truly your own. This is my way of giving you that. But more than that, it is a test of character. I knew others in the family would resist. I knew they might even try to take it. But I also knew you would fight for what was rightfully yours, because you have strength in you that they don't understand. When I am gone, they may come for you. They may try to twist the truth. Don't let them. The documents here will protect you. And remember, family isn't defined by blood alone, but by loyalty and love. With love always, Grandpa." I pressed the letter to my chest, tears streaming down my cheeks. The shadow. I barely had time to collect myself before the sound of tires crunching on gravel reached my ears. My stomach dropped. A moment later, voices echoed down the hall. It was my mother. And my uncle. "Dad?" Mom called sharply. "What's going on? Why is Emily here again?" I shoved the papers back into the briefcase and clutched it to my chest as they entered the study. My uncle's eyes immediately narrowed on the case. "So it's true. You gave it to her." Grandpa straightened in his chair, his voice firm. "It was never yours to take. It was always hers." Mom's face crumpled, torn between anger and desperation. "Dad, she doesn't understand what she's doing. She's just a girl. That apartment should be ours. It's what we agreed." "No," Grandpa snapped, his voice ringing with finality. "You agreed. I never promised you a thing. I saw how greed consumed you both, and that's why I chose Emily." The room went silent, the weight of his words pressing down like a stone. I took a shaky breath, then spoke. "I know everything now. I know you've been lying to me. I know you tried to keep this from me, but it's mine, and I won't let you take it." My uncle's face turned red, his fists clenching, but Grandpa's sharp gaze held him back. "If either of you lay a hand on her, you'll regret it," he warned. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in my uncle's eyes. The aftermath. The days that followed were a blur. My mother stopped speaking to me, retreating into cold silence. My uncle tried once more to intimidate me, but when I showed him the notarized deed, his threats lost their bite. My aunt, caught in the middle, apologized quietly, but offered little else. It hurt, God, it hurt to see my family fracture this way, to realize that blood ties weren't enough to keep us together. But in a strange way, I felt stronger than ever. I moved into the apartment within a week. At first, it felt strange, sleeping in a place that had been empty for so long. But slowly, I made it mine, painting the walls, adding bookshelves, filling it with pieces of myself. Sometimes, when the sunlight hit the windows just right, I swore I could feel Grandpa's presence there, watching over me. The final goodbye. A month later, Grandpa passed away peacefully in his sleep. The loss shattered me, but I found comfort in knowing he had trusted me, prepared me, and loved me enough to fight for me even at the end. At the funeral, my mother stood beside me stiffly, her hand never reaching for mine. My uncle didn't look at me at all. But as I laid a single white rose on Grandpa's casket, I whispered, "Thank you. I won't let you down." In that moment, I realized the apartment wasn't just a gift, it was a symbol of the bond we had shared, of his belief in me when no one else did. And though my family might never forgive me, I knew I had made the right choice. The legacy. Now, whenever I unlock the door to Unit 3B, I feel a sense of peace. It's more than just an apartment. It's a reminder that I'm stronger than I thought, braver than I believed, and more loved than I realized. Grandpa gave me more than a place to live. He gave me a future, a legacy. And though the truth had torn my family apart, it had also set me free.